Hey everybody, it's John Barrows with Make It Happen Mondays. Thanks for joining me, or for those of you who are going to join. Today's episode, we're going to be hitting on thought leadership and kind of my thoughts on thought leadership and how it's getting a little bit of overplayed these days, but also how to become a thought leader. But before we go ahead and do that, I wanted to actually give a shout out. A couple of things. I'm playing around with my new earbuds here. These things are pretty fantastic. So by the way, if you can't hear me, just hit me up on the Facebook Live chat here, because I just want to make sure. I've been just kind of screwing around with a few things from the Bluetooth standpoint. That's been messing up a lot of stuff. So if you can't hear me, let me know. But yeah, and also before we get started, I want to give a shout out and an example of some really good social selling, in my opinion. So I've been doing this Facebook Live thing for a while, and well, seven episodes here for so 7 weeks, and just still trying to figure it out and try to add value in those type of things. And one of the things that I've been talking about is, again, thought leadership here, which is ideally, bringing other people involved in this conversation, answering your questions. And something that happened, one of the kids over at Blue Jeans, so Blue Jeans Networks, I'm going to give them a shout out, and Patrick specifically over there, has been paying attention, right? So he's been paying attention to what I've been doing, following my blogs, those type of things. And he hit me up on LinkedIn the other day, and he said, "Hey, John, would adding video, bringing other people's video into Facebook Live, would that add value to you?" Right? And I played a little bit of a game because he asked a close-ended question, so all I sent back was yes, right? I always want to make sure you ask an open-ended question, try to get me engaged a little bit more. But I said, yeah, it actually would add a lot of value. And then he hit me up again with, would you be available to have a conversation about this? Because I'm pretty interested in what you're doing, and I think what we have here could really add some value to what you're doing. So I said, all right, cool. So I scheduled a meeting with him, and the idea of being able to bring somebody in, because I work out of my house, as you guys can see. Bringing somebody here to my house, an industry thought leader, expert, that type of stuff is just, I don't think I want to do that. Plus, it logistically would be a nightmare. So, but bringing them in on video would be pretty cool. And I didn't even know you could do that on Facebook Live. I'm doing this right now on my iPhone, and I think it's actually kind of a pain in the ass that you can't do Facebook Live on your desktop or your laptop. But with Blue Jeans, you can actually launch it through Facebook Live, through your laptop, through their session, and it goes straight to Facebook Live, and you can bring anybody you want in on this thing. So I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. So I sent this out there. I said, hey, let's book a meeting a week out or so. I'm super booked this week, and so whatever. And then last week, a client of mine, so my schedule got all screwed up. The snow, we got, 2 feet of snow or whatever, a foot of snow, whatever, that screwed up my whole schedule. And I was supposed to go to Wisconsin, and I couldn't. Client was actually pretty upset because, my flight got canceled. There was nothing I could do about it. But the client was pretty upset because they were flying all sorts of people in. And so I was figuring they were just going to reschedule it, but they didn't. They wanted to actually do it, and they wanted to do it remotely. And I was like, oh, man. And I use Join Me for that, usually for most of my remote stuff. But for those of you who are familiar with Join Me, they got that little circle that shows a video, which would really be rough throughout the entire day and wouldn't allow for the engagement. So I'm like, well, Blue Jeans. So I hit the kid Patrick up. I said, hey, man, let's get on the phone right now. It was Tuesday. I had the training on a Wednesday. I was like, tell me what this Facebook Live thing is, and let me know if I can light this up. And he was like, yep, showed me how to do it. And I was like, cool, send me over the contract. So I paid for a year in advance, didn't even ask for the discount, done. And it was probably one of the easier sales he's had in a long time because I immediately saw the value. There was also some urgency for me to do it. I was going to do it anyways, but I was just going to get to it. But all of a sudden I had a need for it, so I signed up. So I bring that up as an example of, your clients our clients are talking. They're out there. They're in, wherever they are. We need to be there and we need to listen to them, because if you hit the right, hey, this is what I'm looking for, or this is what I'm doing, and you bring value to the table, those sales cycles can be hella fast, right? People can close real quick when you nail something that they're trying to accomplish and you do it in the right way. So again, big ups to Patrick over there, and Blue Jeans. I'm going to give them a shout out because the stuff works, and I'm going to be using them moving forward. I haven't still figured out my strategy for bringing people in yet, so you'll hopefully see that in the next couple of weeks here. Okay. So with that, today, the topic I decided to chat about today was thought leadership. And the reason being is because I'm supposed to have a podcast right after this. So at 1 o'clock, I was going to do a podcast with Real Sales Talk. and I was thinking about what to talk about for that, and wanted to kind of dive in with them about thought leadership and what their thoughts were on it. That got rescheduled to next week, but I just want to kind of chat about it a little bit here, because I think people are just way overplaying thought leadership and forcing, and I don't think a lot of people have the right mindset when it comes to it. For me, it's kind of the same thing with challenger sale, right? Challenger sale, like, be a challenger. It's like, I like challenger sale. I really do. I love the mentality of not just saying yes to your customers and really kind of pushing back on them. Thought leadership, same thing. Like, I love, the idea of being a thought leader and really guiding your client through the process there. But the problem is you can't be a thought leader unless you're an actual thought leader. You guys know me, I follow Gary Vaynerchuk a lot, and he talks about, you can't be a 22-year-old life coach, right? I mean, maybe to a 10-year-old kid, sure, fine, whatever, but you can't be a 22-year-old life coach, right? It's the same thing with thought leader. Like, I'm sorry if you're 22, 23, 24 years old, or you're brand new in an industry, or you're brand new at your company, you're not a thought leader. Like, just stop even pretending like you are. Same thing with challenger sale. I got myself in a little bit of trouble a little while back because I stood up at I think it was a SaaStr conference or something like that. And it was when challenger was super hot. It was like last year. And I was like, could y'all do me a favor and stop teaching these 22-year-old kids how to be a challenger? Like, you got to have some business acumen to be a challenger, to be a true fundamental challenger, right? I mean, trust me, I tried it when I was like 22, 23 years old, when I was selling IT services, right? I kind of got to the point where I thought I knew what I was talking about. And then, I'd start pushing back and be like, oh, I appreciate the way you're looking at that. But if you thought about it this way, because, I help people make these decisions every day. And, you go tell a CEO that, who's been doing their business for 30 years, and you come in with half a year experience because you read a couple of blog posts and you start recommending stuff to me when you don't know what you're talking about. See how long that conversation lasts, right? So, but, all right, I think we can move in the direction. So I don't want to pretend like I'm a thought. Let's put it this way. I'm 41 years old, okay? I am just getting to the point in my career where I'm being considered somewhat of a thought leader, okay? Where I'm being asked to speak at conferences and those type of things. That's really happened over the past, 5 or 6 years is where I've really started to move into that realm. But it's taken me 20 plus years to get here, and it's been a long road. Like, I've been really methodical about building my skill set and really honing my craft in my industry, right? So if you're, like I said, if you're brand new into this, no chance you're going to be a thought leader. And I think it's insulting to pretend like you are, especially to people who know that they're talking about. But I do think we can move in that direction. And this ties to also something that I've thought about a lot, which is in the whole sales development world, okay? And I don't mean just SDRs or BDRs. I mean the development of sales professionals. It's finally starting to get some traction where we're getting educated a little bit more than we were before, right? It's still the most undereducated profession on the planet, but at least there's starting to become some colleges that you can focus on it. There's more training that you can go to. But we train on skills, technique. We train on all these different things, process when it comes to sales. But we don't train on business acumen. Right? We kind of leave it up to sales reps to develop their own business acumen, their like understanding of business and how to have those conversations. And so I think we can preempt that. I think we can accelerate that, okay, as our own sales professionals. Forget about whoever your manager is and who's training you and those type of things. But as a sales professional, I think we should focus on that and develop our business acumen while we learn to be a thought leader. And the way that we do that is by educating ourselves on what's happening out there and paying attention to our industry, our field, the roles that we reach out to, and learning about them specifically, right? And that's really where social selling flipped for me. When social selling really started coming out, I was like, great, yet another thing I got to do to be successful in sales. Fantastic, add it to the list, right? But when it flipped for me was, and also as a Gen Xer, like the whole idea of tweeting and posting and all that stuff was pretty ridiculous to me. But where it flipped was when I started thinking of it as educating myself first, and then and then when I found something interesting, taking that information and then sharing it out there with my context around this. You've heard me talk about this before. Again, another Gary Vee quote here. Everybody talks about content is king. Well, context is God, right? And that's really where you want to add your context to the content that you're sharing out there. And that's how you can become or move into that thought leadership world. So, tools that you should use, recommendation here. And I just posted this out on Twitter for somebody who asked me this question on Twitter, which was Feedly, right? Feedly. That all it is an RSS aggregator that can bring a bunch of data feeds into one, so you can kind of don't have to poke around. You don't have to go all over the place. And so for me, like for instance, SaaS is my industry, right? That's the industry I focus most of my efforts on. So I have to stay up to date on what's happening in the SaaS world. Like, who are the thought leaders in SaaS that I can pay attention to and try to stay at least up to date on what's happening, right? So I go into Feedly, I set up a folder called SaaS, and I go find the 3 or 4 or 5 thought leaders in SaaS, and I go follow their blogs or whatever they're posting out there, and just to stay up to date. VPs of sales, that's my industry, CEOs and certain CEOs, VPs of sales in SaaS industry. So I follow CEOs who are speaking about stuff in the SaaS industry. I follow VPs of sales and their challenges that they're faced with. I join LinkedIn groups for VPs of sales and CEOs and SaaS and those type of things. So I can, not to troll for leads, but to just listen. To listen to what they're saying and what kind of questions they're asking, what kind of challenges that they're trying to address, so that I can just have a better talk track. Right? I mean, I remember when I was selling IT services in my first company, Thrive Networks, like we were selling outsourced IT services, right? And I didn't know what I was talking about when it came to, servers, workstations, any of that stuff. So I would always go on a meeting, like it was always a dual sales call with my engineer, Dylan. And so Dylan would come with me, and the whole idea was I would set the stage and then kind of hand it over to Dylan to have the technical conversation, but I was the relationship guy. That was my role in this whole equation. And so I remember one time walking in and to the CEO, pretty legit, decent sized company, a really good prospect for us, CEO's office, and I was mentality, all right, Dylan, you and me partner up here. And this was right around the time when Freakonomics came out. I don't know if you guys have read that book, but Freakonomics, it was right when it really first came out. And I remember walking in this guy's office, CEO's office, and my CTO, Dylan, looked at his bookshelf, and on his bookshelf was Freakonomics. And my Dylan said, "Oh, I see, have you read that book yet?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, as a matter of fact." And they just went off for the next 15, 20 minutes on what their thoughts were on it and all these different things. And I'm sitting there going, whoa, you could literally feel the rapport being built between them. And I'm sitting there on the sideline like, yeah, Freakonomics, that's a pretty funny name for a book, and I felt like an idiot. And so that's where it dawned on me. I'm like, I gotta start paying attention to what CEOs read. So that's why I started signing up for. I don't like reading books. I think books are a waste of time, but that's why I started reading those kind of 3-page summaries of all the business books, all those tools and resources you can do for that, or books on tape, or whatever, Audible, that type of thing, because I wanted to start to have those type of conversations that were not just ask my bant questions, and here's my product and features and benefits and that type of shit. So my point is that if you really care about your profession, you should be educating yourselves on your industry, the industries that you're going after and trying to sell to, and the roles that you're trying to go after and sell to as well. So, if you're going after CIOs right now, say you're going after CIOs in the healthcare industry. Well, do a Google search on CIOs healthcare priority 2017 and see what comes up. I guarantee you there is a blog post out there. I guarantee you there are people talking about it, or there's forums or something like that. And put this as part of your routine. Like, I have a morning routine where every morning I drink my coffee, and instead of checking my fantasy leagues, getting all pissed off about that type of shit, I just read through my data feeds. I follow my top tier accounts, right, on stuff like Owler and and Sales Navigator and Google and those type of things. So I get the alerts on what's happening with them and their businesses. But then I read articles about stuff that I should be reading articles about anyways. You know what I mean? If you're not really thinking about your own career and developing your own business, around business, and not just like, how do I sell better, but, like, how do I just be a better business person and have better conversations and care more? I think one of the things I talk about is catching your sales groove. and everybody there's a point in every sales rep's career where they catch their sales groove, and I say that it means you stop pitching your solutions and you start having conversations about your solutions, right? You start caring more about what the client needs than you do about your commission checks, and that's really where your commission checks start going through the roof, and it's also when you start giving a shit about your profession and what you're doing and stop going through the motions, right? And I think, I've had 3 sales calls this morning, and 2 of the 3 ended with, you know what, John, this was a great conversation. I got a lot out of this conversation. Forget about the actual sales pitch here. Like I like what you're talking about, but I got a lot of value out of this conversation. Because I don't take the typical, okay, tell me about your priorities. Do you have budget? Is there a need? Are you the person authority that has the authority for this? Because, you go through those motions. People go through prospects go through the motions with you, all right? And they tell you the basic level of information that you don't get the engagement. And then effectively you're on a spreadsheet with a number, and that's why ultimately it comes down to discounts, right? But if you give a shit and you really start talking to people about what their real needs are and having conversations around it and bringing some stuff to the table, that's where you can start to make a difference, right? So that whole thought leader thing, I come back to that as really putting yourself in a position to be a thought leader by educating yourselves, but don't pretend like you are. I think the best thing, and any of us, by the way, what I think we should all work on more is asking better questions, right? Because I don't care how experienced you are in sales, that we all need to figure out how to ask better questions. And I think we can do that. The better questions come with better education, right? So for instance, I always used to be a priority seller, right? I always sold other priorities, but I'm embarrassed to say up until about 35 years old, the way I got to that was by simply saying something like, so tell me about your priorities, right? And looking back at that question, or that statement, whatever, I realized that I used to get very vague answers. I'd get stuff like priority, or what are priorities of revenue? It's like, oh, let me show you how I could impact your revenue, right? And then go off on my canned pitch. But now, instead of just tell me about your priorities, if I'm going after a CIO in the healthcare industry, well, I'm going to do some homework, like I said earlier, of what do CIOs in the healthcare industry in 2017 care about? Like, do a Google search on that. Or go talk to the clients that I work with who are CIOs in the healthcare industry and understand what their priorities are. And then when I ask that question to that new CIO or whoever, I say, hey, you know what? Instead of saying, tell me about your priorities, I can say, you know what? We're working with other CIOs in the healthcare industry who are telling us that some of their top priorities moving into 2017 are X, Y, and Z. Are those Are those similar to the ones that you're trying to face right now? Even if they're not, the fact that you showed that you at least know my world in a little bit, tends to open up the conversation a little bit more. All right. So that whole idea of giving a shit, that's why doing homework, I mean, I know this is basic stuff here, but it still amazes me how many reps don't do homework before they make a phone call to somebody or have a meeting with somebody, right? Don't you dare say, tell me about your business or tell me about your priorities or, John, why don't you give a little background for me? Like, if you haven't done your homework and looked me up on LinkedIn, don't you dare have that, because it's going to be super annoying, all right? And I'm going to treat you like every other sales rep, but if you pay attention, you got something to bring to the table. You got some new idea or you got some example of another customer that you've worked with to help address that problem, and you can share that with me. All right, now I might start paying attention. That's where that whole lead with insights comes in, right? That's the part of Challenger that I actually do appreciate. And don't get me wrong, I like like I said, I like the Challenger sale mentality. Whether the methodology or not, who knows? I haven't gone through the training in a while, but I think it's dangerous for younger kids, because I think that's more of an elevated thought process and mentality once you get that business acumen. But where I think a Challenger really is appropriate for everybody is the whole lead with insights, right? Like, read that article, share that article, put your context around it, right? So when you read something that you find interesting based on the industry or whatever it is, that's where you take the extra 2 seconds and say, hey, anybody, focusing on this industry, you should really take a look at this article, because, pages 3 and 5 talk about how to integrate this into your process or whatever it is. And then you share it out there, right? Then you move into that, okay, now I'm starting to roll a little bit here. Now I'm learning something, I'm sharing stuff. People are looking at me and saying, okay, this kid has some insights here, so I might actually pay attention, right? Somebody told me this a while ago that I thought was pretty interesting, which was, they want to they want to have a conversation with somebody, and after the conversation, like a sales call with somebody, and after the sales call, whether it's in person or over the phone, they want to be able to ask them, hey, would you have paid for this? Like, would you have paid for this call? Would you have paid for this meeting, right? And the mentality there, like, did you get enough value out of this conversation where you actually would have paid for it? Now, how much, who knows? But I have that mentality every time I talk to somebody, is every single time I talk to somebody. I don't want to oversell them. You know, I genuinely want to understand what their situation is, and I try to qualify prospects out as much as I'm trying to qualify them in. You know what I mean? Because I don't want bad business. I don't want people that don't fit that sweet spot for me, because this industry, mine, and I'm guaranteeing yours, is too small. You know, you get one bad, now with Twitter and all this other stuff on social, it's like you do one piece of bad business and one bad tweet goes out there about you, or one bad review on Yelp or Amazon, or if you're selling a consumer-based product, like, you're screwed. You know what I mean? So I'm hunting for that ideal customer profile, that company that I know I can make a difference for. And I really try to find as many people to offload stuff as I can so I can help you out, right? So I work with all my competitors. You know why? Because I know what their sweet spots are. And so when I have that conversation with a client and they're not a good fit for me, I'm like, you know who you should talk to? Boom, them. And a lot of people are like, really? You know, I'm like, yeah, look, you're not a good fit for what I have right now. I know it sounds good, but it's just not, you don't have the structure in place or whatever it is. So you should go talk to them first. And you know how much business I get back around on that one too? Like, clients come back, hey, John, yes, thank you, we built that, now we're ready for your stuff. Or, you know what, it doesn't look like we're a good fit, but go talk to so-and-so who is, because I think they could really use your stuff. And that's how I built my business over the years. Social and brand building and thought leadership, which is the topic here, is becoming way more important the more we evolve into sales. Because the ones who are going to survive from the artificial intelligence taking over our jobs and all that other stuff are those people that really are those thought leaders, are the filters that people look to. Because, I've actually been doing some research. And by the way, feel free to ask questions as I go on this rant. I'm just kind of rolling here. But as we move into this world of stuff, I've been looking at these studies about what people trust anymore. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm a brand guy, right? I'm pretty loyal to brands like Adidas. You've seen me with my shell toes and stuff like that. I'll wear those until I die. Nike has always been a brand of mine. Acura's, I love cars, and Acura, Grey Goose vodka, like those. I'm very brand loyal, and most of my generation is. The millennials are not brand loyal. They are actually anti-brand. What they are loyal to, though, is personalities, right? Think, unfortunately, Kardashian, right? It's like, or any one of these people that they trust. And if you transfer people to brands, well, yes, those people have their own personal brands. But it's like, hey, this person is telling me that I should be focusing on this stuff, so I'll focus on that stuff. So that's really why I think right now, it's so critical to build your personal brand, to build that trust factor, so that when people see, when you post something, when you suggest something, when you have a conversation with them, they're looking at you as somebody that they can trust. And the more we focus on that, the sooner, the better, right? I mean, right now we have such an opportunity to build that brand. It's ridiculous. And I'm going to keep giving Morgan shout outs. The Morgan Ingram, you go check him out on Snapchat, and he's got these SDR Chronicles and that type of stuff. Like, this kid has built his brand. He was like a year into sales, and and then he just got promoted to be an SDR manager, and he does this SDR Chronicles, and he snaps these little hidden gems and stuff like that. I mean, that kid's gotten his brand to the point where it's almost at the level of mine, and he's done it in a year. It's taken me 20 plus years to get mine to where it is, right? Now, granted, I didn't have a lot of these tools and resources up until the past like 3 or 4, but I mean, right now you have an opportunity to move in that direction by sharing information, sharing content, and everything else, right? So anyways, I'll open it up for questions. I don't know if anybody has anything. I know Philip here says, my favorite thought leaders don't care about that title. Exactly. They're just in love with what they do and genuinely interested. Exactly. I mean, Philip, again, I'm going to go back to Gary Vee. he pushes pretty hard. He doesn't give a shit about, don't call me a thought leader. He's like, I'm just sharing content. I'm sharing information. I'm blessed to be in this position that I'm in. So, like whether you do business with me or not, I say that probably 5, 6 times a day. I say that. It's like, I don't care whether you do business with me or not, do this. Like, go look at this company. Go, make sure that the reps are doing this or whatever. It's kind of like it's the same thing with entrepreneurship, right? Like everybody says, like, the best entrepreneurs don't really call themselves entrepreneurs. It's like, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, just by you saying I'm an entrepreneur, you're probably not. You might be a wantrepreneur, but you're really not an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs don't label themselves that way. Same thing with thought leaders. It's just, these are people that like sharing content and know what the fuck they're talking about, all right? And they do it in a way that has that's again, I'll go back to one of Gary's books, right? He's like jab, 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 jab. I think it's jab, 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 right hook. And the whole idea there is add value, add value, add value, then have the ask, right? Early on in my career, when I was started to do networking, and for those of you who are looking, by the way, I would recommend everybody go to networking events and join networking groups. I don't care if you're brand new into sales and you just do inside sales. It's one of the best ways to get out there and develop your skill, to go to events at night and just get comfortable introducing yourself to people and having that talk track. And same thing with groups. And there's a group that started my networking career. It's called BNI. BN as in Nancy, I. It's Business Networking International. And and their whole mantra is givers gain, right? The more you give, the more you get back. And, at first I was like, okay, whatever, but it's 100% true. I spent the first probably 5, 6 years of my career literally going to every networking group and every networking event I could possibly go to. And my whole focus was trying to make connections and add value to every single person I had a conversation with. And because I would always make a connection, make a referral to somebody, and it was a legit referral. It wasn't just here's a name you could talk to. I talked to this person, they're expecting your call or whatever. Because I focused so much on that early on in my career, fast forward, when when we sold that company to Staples, and then I went off on my own, when I had to start my own business, I got to start a company. Like, so you need finances, you need legal help, you need, all these different things to set up a company. Every single one of those resources was one phone call away. So literally it was like, okay, cool. Hey, I need some contracts set up, buddy. Could you help me out? And I was happy to pay for it, but all these people were like, you know what, John, absolutely. You know what, I'll give you 6 months free of this. Let me get you started here. Go take a look. You talk to this person, make sure. I had a fully functioning business up in less than a week with a website, finance, bank, all sorts of stuff in less than a week. And they were all one phone call away. And I remember my partner at the time was like, holy shit, like how did you know all these? I'm like, well, I just knew all these people, and it was because of the work that I had done early. I got it all back when I needed it too. So, I just can't recommend you just taking your shit seriously. Stop going through the motions and really try to be that business professional that people are looking for. So Nicholas here, it says, hey, big fan of your blogs and had a training from you 1 year ago and doing a lot of the internal selling to my own colleagues, cross-selling. Let's see what else you got here. Cross-selling. Thoughts on how to improve successful internal selling. Yeah, man, I think internal selling, I'm guessing, well, a little bit more clarity on this one. Is it like when you get a lead, are you an SDR side of the house and you now have to sell that meeting to the AEs, or are you trying to sell something internally, like a program internally? I'll address both as you go through this. But, with the internal selling, I'll talk about, hey, I'm an SDR. I sold the client on a meeting, and now I got to sell my internal AE on how, whether they should take that meeting or not. A lot of that has to come down with your professionalism and how you set up those meetings and the qualification and how structured you are. All right. I believe a lot of our products and services, and I'm going macro here, I think a lot of our products and services are being commoditized. I genuinely believe, I know that we can differentiate ourselves purely based on the way that we manage the process. Okay, how prepared we are when we go into our meetings, how much homework, how much structure we have. Not, again, scripts or templates or any of that stuff, but structure. So, for instance, meetings internally. I have just like I have meeting agendas with clients, I have agendas with people internally too. Like, why are we here? What is the goal of this meeting? And then afterwards, I summarize that conversation and send it over to them for their commitment, right? So selling things internally, say I go and I have a conversation with somebody, a prospect, right, whatever, and they say, yeah, these are my needs or whatever. I'm going to summarize that conversation. You've heard me say, go look at this one called, type in Jay Barrows' favorite nugget, right? That's a blog post on my summary email. And it's hey, really good talking to you. Here's the things that we talked about today. What else, could you please email me back and let me know if it's all accurate and if I missed anything? You get them to say yes. Now that's a nice way. Hey, sure. Look, this is what the client said. Here's the actual. I documented what we have a conversation. The client confirmed it. Now let's sell it internally. And so you better take this meeting effectively, right? You have documentation. So if that AE comes back to you and says that was a bullshit meeting, you're saying, really? So that's selling a meeting internally. Now, if you're selling an idea internally, it's the same thing with selling a client, man. You just got to understand what the priorities are, how it aligns with those, and then be as structured as you can with that beginning, middle, end. As far as what is the problem you're trying to solve, like what's the solution here, and what are the results, and how you're going to track it. All right. So hopefully that helps as far as selling things internally. But yeah, just the more structure you can put into this, and the more confirmation you can get from the client that shows you've done your homework, show you've actually qualified this the right way, the better off you're going to be. Okay? I'll go to 2, and then let's see, thoughts on internal selling. All right, so Bobby, thanks here, man. Hey, John, the odds of setting a meeting with a prospect at an event are best when you do it on the spot. How do you find the balance between persistent but not being too aggressive? Now, I love this. This is one of my favorites, right? This is it's the same thing with, I'm going to talk about over the phone, and I'll transition that into on site. So one of the most important things that we can get at any stage of the sales process is a defined next step, all right, scheduled on the calendar. So like say somebody says send me information, right? Usually the way send me information works is, sure, when do you want to, I'll follow, when do you want to follow up on that? Oh, next week, fantastic, I'll call you next week. And then we touch base, check in, whatever, right? So a way to address that, here's a nugget for you, is to, when somebody says send me information, you go what, when, why, right? What information would you like to see? When would you like to see it? And why? Those are, for somebody who's really interested in the information, those are easy questions to answer. Somebody who's not, rather difficult, right? So say they answer them, and then you say, okay, great. Happy to send you that information. When do you want to schedule a brief 15-minute call so we can follow up on that information, see if it makes sense for us to take the next steps? Next week. When next week? And then you do this with a really nice tone of voice, by the way. You go, actually, you know what? You got your calendar in front of you? And then shh. There'll be that little awkward pause where they realize that you got them. Because if they say no to that, they are blatantly lying to your face, all right? And by the way, if you ever do that to a VP of sales, you'll literally hear the smirk on the other end of the line being like, God damn, I wish my reps would do this shit. Yeah, all right, let's get it on the calendar, right? And then you lock it in, you send them a meeting invitation. So now, does it guarantee they're going to be there? No. But does it give you a much better likelihood? Absolutely. So then let's go to trade shows or on the floor. It's the same scenario, man. You've heard me talk about AIDA, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. That is the fundamental process of sales. 1898, a guy by the name of St. Elmo's came up with it. He said, we have 5 to 15 seconds to get someone's attention, 2 minutes to earn their interest, and then we close them on a meeting where we can create desire and action. So that's really when we're prospecting, whether it's over the phone or in person, that's what we're selling. We're not selling our products and services. We're selling time. We're selling the next step. So let's do a role play here on meeting somebody at an event. When somebody says, hey, John, nice to meet you, whatever it is, what do you guys do? First of all, I want to try to grab some qualification criteria so I can make it as tailored as possible, because I don't want to just throw up on you about my generic elevator pitch, right? So great. What company do you work for? And what industry are you in? And oh, cool. And what's your role within that company? Okay, cool. So, well, for people like you, like in your role in industries like this is what we do, right? Now, what I hit them with is what I call an attention grabber, right? Which is 5 to 15 seconds. What can you say to get somebody to say, tell me more? It's not the elevator pitch, usually based on a result that you can drive for somebody else. Like, hey, you know what? We showed other companies or other people like you in your roles how to drive down the amount of time they spend on X by this, and that's actually what we do. Right? That's what you do. That's your differentiator. So you hit them with an attention grabber. And the goal there is to say, well, how do you do that? Tell me more. And when they say that, you say, all right, well, then you give them a little bit more context. Well, through our platform and our services, we kind of take this approach or whatever it is. Then the whole thing is interesting. Tell me more. Actually, and that's where you pause. You know what? Now that I got your attention, I know you're interested. It seems like this is a pretty decent fit, so why don't we stop here? We're at a trade show, we're at an event. I'm sure you want to meet a whole bunch of other people here, so why don't we schedule something on the calendar for next week? You know what, you got your iPhone on you? I know you do, right? This is my iPhone, this is my wallet. I don't. Oh my shit, my iPhone's right there. But do you have your iPhone on you? And, and you just do it kind of real matter of factly. So you know, it sounds like this actually is it sounds like you're interested. It sounds like this is something we might be able to take a deeper dive into. But I'd love to just segment that and put that out tomorrow or next week or whatever it is. So, because again, mess here. You're probably not going to remember this conversation. So I just want to make sure that we really dig into the details of what your scenario is, and so I can show the value that we have to the team. So why don't we schedule something next week? You know what? We're messing. Why don't we? You got your iPhone on you? I know you do, right? I can see it in your pocket. And you make it awkward on somebody, right? I do. Because if they're genuinely interested in setting something up, yeah, shit, man, let's take it out. Let's schedule something right now. If they're not, they'll be like, oh, why don't you send me an email? Then you know where you stand. So there's a fine line between being direct and being rude. And I think the direct piece is when somebody says, yeah, sure, why don't we schedule something like that? Great. Why don't we just pick a time now? So I would carry your iPhone around with you at the trade shows, at those things, as well as the scanners, the whole scan your badge and whatever. That's for marketing, fine. But carry around your iPhone. Or have your laptop, if you're at a booth, have your laptop ready with a calendar on it so you can just pick a time right there and schedule with the client, right? And then take some notes. I usually take their business card and flip it over and write down some notes right after the conversation about what we talked about, any personal things or whatever it is that I can use as a reference to send after that and prep them for the meeting, those type of things, okay? All right, let's do one more. It says, Nicholas, let's see, I do education on the software we sell, so I try to tell my colleagues to add trainings to their offerings. Yep, okay. Yeah, just make sure that, you introduce that in the right way, right? I mean, the best thing to do is introduce all of it up front and then peel back if you have to. And that actually brings up a great point on negotiations here, Nicholas. Don't make sure the reps don't start with the base and then add things, towards the end. Oh, well, do you want this? Start with the whole package. Like, hey, ideal state, this is what people, when they buy the software, it includes training, this, and this, and give them that price, because now you have something to back off of, right? If you start with just the base and then you try to add things later, then it just increases the price, and then you're good shape for negotiation, because, on the flip side, if you just sell everything, because then you're taking stuff away. So if they want a discount, sure, no problem. I can give you a discount. Like we'll get creative with your pricing. I'd have to take the training away, and that'll cut the price down by X percentage. And now when you're taking things away, that's where people are like, well, I need that. It's like, well, okay, well, you have to pay for that. All right, so keep that in mind as well. All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. Every Monday I'm going to keep trying to do this. So. Stay on track here, and I'm going to start to introduce other people into the equation here, talk about stuff that hopefully you get value from. And again, if you could help me spread the word, I'd really appreciate it. I'm also going to be on some podcasts coming up here. You can hit me up on Snapchat as usual. It's John M as in Michael Barrows, where I'll answer any questions one-on-one with you, and then my blog and all that other stuff too. All right, everybody, make it a great week. Let's make it happen. Cheers.